Welcome back to this channel. My name is Akekere Benjamin and I make content on academics and basically academic pursuit. So what I do on this channel is that I will look into things that are difficult for you to understand and I'll bring it to your doorstep so you can understand better, and also we can understand and communicate better. So if you're new to this channel, please do well to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and also turn off the notification bell. So whenever I drop a new video, you'll be the first person to be notified. Let's get down to our today's lecture. On this lecture, we are going to be discussing on the absorption of carbohydrate. So if you have not watched the previous video, we are talking about digestion of carbohydrate, please, you should go back and watch that video. Basically, our today's discussion is on the absorption of carbohydrate. So let's look how carbohydrate is being absorbed. Now, on my previous video, I made mention about the classification of carbohydrate. The carbohydrate can be classified based on the numbers of sugar present in them. So if we have one molecule of sugar, it is known as monosaccharide. If we have 2 molecules of sugar, it is a disaccharide. If we have 3 to 10 molecules of sugar, it is an oligosaccharide. And if we have from 10 above, it's a polysaccharide. Now, this classification of sugar, they are not all absorbed. There are some sets that is what absorbed, which is only the monosaccharide that are absorbed. First of all, carbohydrate is being broken down in the system by some organs, and the smaller intestine plays the greater role to absorb these molecules, which are also called the building blocks. Now, what are those molecules? Those molecules, they are what? Example of them, which we have the glucose, we have galactose, and we also have fructose. These are the building blocks that are absorbed in the smaller intestine. The smaller intestine, which I made mention, is divided into 3 parts. The first part, which is what? The duodenum. The duodenum enhances or activates the end part of what? Digestion. So the last part or the last organ for digestion is the duodenum. While the basic site for absorption is what? Is basically the what? Jejunum. So we are going to look into how these end products are being what? Absorbed into the bloodstream. Now, first of all, before absorption will take place or during the process of absorption, there is some transporters that aids absorption rather into the bloodstream, that are carrying those end products from the smaller intestine into the bloodstream. And those transporters, they are being recalled by a mnemonic. Now, what is that mnemonic? That mnemonic is read as this mnemonic here. So it is read as what? Baby kid lips on think father what? Mother. So if you can be able to record this, you can be able to know the sites, because we have so many organs in our body. So you can be able to know the organ that contains or that have that specific word, glucose transporter. So these are the glucose transporter. On the right hand side, we have the glucose transporter 1, we have the glucose transporter 2, and we also have the glucose transporter 3. We also have the glucose transporter 4. There's a difference between all these glucose transporter. The basic difference from all these glucose transporter is that on glucose transporter 4, it is basically mediated by insulin. So insulin is mediating glucose transporter 4, while the others are not mediated by insulin. So they are known as a uniport transport. We have other glucose transporter such as GLUT5, we have GLUT6, we have GLUT7. We also have some sodium-dependent glucose transporter. Now let's look into the first glucose transporter. On the first glucose transporter, using the mnemonic BBB, the first B there represents the brain cells, while the second B is on the red blood cells, and the third B is on the fructose cell. So these organs, they contain this first glucose transporter. So if this end product is being transported into these particular organs, they are being transported by the glucose transporter 1. The same thing with glucose transporter 2, which is the kid lips. The key there signifies what? Liver. While the LI signifies the key there signifies rather kidney, while the LI signifies the liver, and the PS signifies what? The pancreas. So the kidney, the liver, and the pancreas, they have this glucose transporter by which they carry those end products, glucose, galactose, and what? Fructose. The next glucose transporter, which is the glutathione, we have the think. The first T, which is the placenta, the N, which is the neuron, the K, which is what? The kidney. So these organs, they have glucose transporter 3. Now we have the last one, which is what? Mother and father. On mother and father, we have the muscles, and we also have what? The fat cell. So mother signify muscle cells and father signify what? Fat cells. So these organs, it contains what? The insulin-mediated glucose transporter, what? 4. So the GLUT4 is basically insulin-mediated. That's the difference between GLUT4 and the other glucose what? Transporter. Now recall the end product of digestion, which are what? The glucose, the galactose, and fructose. The reason why I'm bringing this is because of there's a format or there's a way by which glucose and galactose is being transported from the lumen to the intestinal cells, from the intestinal cell to the what? To the bloodstream. And there's a way by which fructose is being transported. If you can be able to recall what diffusion is, we have basically two types of diffusion. We have the active transport, rather we have transport system by which product is being transported. We have the active transport, and we also have the what? Facilitated or carrier protein transport. Now this particular transport system is mediated by one form or the other. Now glucose and galactose, they are transported. Their transport is mediated by an active word transport, meaning it's a diffusion against the concentration gradient. So the diffusion against the concentration gradient is transported as what? Glucose and what? Galactose transport. So the glucose and galactose transport, they are mediated by what? An active transport. The transport system is in two steps. You should be able to recall that in the small intestine, the lumen have a cell, and outside the cell is the bloodstream or the blood. So first of all, those end product is being transported from the lumen to what? To the cell. That is the first step. And the second step is that those products, they are transported from the cell to the what? Outer part, which is the bloodstream. Now the first part, the transport system that carries this end product, they are known as the co-transporters. What are co-transporters? Co-transporters is a special type of transport system or glucose transporter that is mediated by a molecule such as sodium. So if you hear the word S-GLUT1, S-GLUT2, it means sodium-dependent glucose transporter, meaning the transporter, they depend on glucose to carry their product. Now the first step, which is what? Co-transport, by which those products, they are carried from the lumen to the intestinal cell. This process is mediated by a sodium-dependent glucose transporter 1, which is the GLUT1. This GLUT1, you will see them in the intestine, while the GLUT2 that performs the same function to transport galactose and what? Glucose. GLUT2, you basically see them in what? The GLUT2. And we have some clinical defect, or should I say clinical correlation of GLUT2 and GLUT1. Now on GLUT1, it is popularly known as what? Malabsorption. So if you hear the word malabsorption, the inability or the deficiency for the glucose transporter or sodium-dependent glucose transporter 1 to absorb glucose and galactose, it is known as what? Malabsorption. So it is a sudden mutation in what? Sodium glucose transporter 1. And the second one we have is congenital what? Renal glucosuria, which is what? GLUT2. It occurs in the kidney, as we have already read. The second step of this transport or absorption is by which those products that was transported from the lumen to the intestine is being carried from the intestine to the what? Bloodstream. So the particular transport that carries this particular product, they are uniport. While the first one, they are co-transport. The second one, they are import transport system. Now this import transport system is from the cell of the intestine to the bloodstream, and it's mediated by GLUT2, and it's a uniport. GLUT2 is a uniport. So I've already talked about the set of glucose transporters we have. Now the next thing is other monosaccharide transport systems, such as what? Fructose. Fructose is definitely transported in a slow form. Now the way fructose is transported is different from the way glucose and galactose is transported. Glucose and galactose are transported as an active transport, while fructose is a carrier-mediated facilitated transport system, and it occurs in the GLUT5. So the GLUT5 is responsible to carry fructose from the intestine to the bloodstream. And this type of transport system is very slow and it's not complete except with the fermentation of what? Bacteria. So in our summary of today's discussion, we talk about the absorption of carbohydrate, which is the major site for absorption is what? The jejunum, the second part of the smaller intestine. We also talk about the glucose transporters by using the mnemonic I made mention, the VB kid lives on think father and what? Mother. We also discuss about how the building blocks are absorbed, glucose and galactose. They are carried by sodium-dependent glucose transporter 1 and glucose transporter 2. And the way fructose is being transported is by what? The transporter glutathione, and it's not complete except with the fermentation by bacteria. So the next thing we discussed was the step. There are 2 steps involved in glucose transport or galactose transport or fructose transport. The first step is from the lumen to the cell, and the second step is from the cell to the blood. And I made mention of clinical correlation, which is what? The malabsorption and the congenital renal glucosuria. Another monosaccharide transport system, which I made mention concerning the fructose. And this particular transport is not complete except whenever bacteria ferments the whole process to be completed. So in my next video, I'm going to be discussing on the pathways by which glucose generates energy. And that specific pathway, I'm going to be discussing on glycolytic pathway. So please do well to subscribe to this channel, click the like button, and also turn on that notification bell. So whenever I drop a new video like this, you'll be the first person to be notified. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel.